Hey, hi, how are you? My name's Phil. Welcome back to some Deadlock. There were new patch notes dropped again, and this isn't something I see people really do a lot, and these are also pretty sizable patch notes, so I'm gonna just keep doing videos on them when the patch notes are sizable enough to warrant a video. So, the big changes that we see here are the Vitality Investment Tree bonus went back to percent base HP rather than raw constant bonuses, which means that it's how it was in December, pre that update, but it also means that characters that have low base HP are now getting worse returns from our vitality investment. And I think this is in response to how tanky everybody was without having to build much green, which I think is a pretty fair change. I'm pretty much a fan of this overall. It makes the tanky characters be tankier again, and the less tanky characters have less easy investment into being tanky, but it keeps the stuff like Tank Buster and Siphon Bullets being really strong at sucking away that percent max HP. We also did just get a general hero health increase by +3 per level and +4% total, which is pretty solid. I think that this is going to basically make both of these things together. They bring us a little further down from how tanky we were, but not as far as you'd think. The spirit investment rescaling is a really big change that I'm not sure a lot of people are going to be realizing. This right here, these last three numbers are the big ones. 76, 89, 101 turns to 66, 75, 100. Meaning that in order to get to this number here, this like 76, you have to invest even more money into spirit investment than you had to before. This is actually a pretty sizable nerf to spirit investment scaling, which I think is mostly to nerf supports from having as much spirit power as easily, because otherwise it means that the spirit carries who are heavily investing in it and easily getting to that 100% mark of their investment totals, getting to that old 101 or that new 100, is just a bit of an adjustment to make the spirit carries feel like their investment into spirit mattered, and the non-spirit carries feel like they're not just getting tons of free spirit damage for free. This makes hybrid scalers a lot worse overall, but if the hybrid scaler leaned towards spirit already, like Seven and Infernus, then they're probably just fine regardless, because they're buying Boundless, they're buying Escalating, they're getting tons of money into Spirit. Small neutral Spirit resist increase is a bit of a weird change, but whatever. Almost every single one of these changes is nerfing ability range. I think they were like, all right, we're kind of tired of everybody just having the biggest abilities under the sun no matter what they bought. There's a lot of items here. I'm not reading every single one of them out. The biggest changes, in my opinion, are Ballistic Enhancement got another nerf, all the way down to 20% from its original 30, making that a lot less good for characters like Seven and Paradox. It's a lot harder for them to get their free gun damage off of that now, but it's still a pretty good item to buy. And Greater Expansion, nerfing itself from 35% down to 30%. 5% across the board on one of the best ability range increases is a pretty big deal. Echo Shard lost its range as well, which is a decent talking point, but not that big a deal. Some other item changes is Weighted Shots got a buff of 2% debuff resist. Burst Fire got an adjustment to where in place of it being 3.5 seconds of increased fire rate, it's 4.5, and in place of it being on a 7-second cooldown, it's on a 9-second cooldown, so you get an extra second of the fire rate, but your cooldown is 2 seconds longer. I think this is overall a buff for the item, because the whole point of Burst Fire is to be bursty. So having that burst exist for longer, 4.5 seconds is more than enough time to kill someone in the late game. So I don't think this is going to affect most of the carries that it would have affected, like, say, Infernus, who really likes this to reapply their burns and toxic bullets in the late game. This isn't going to hurt them that bad. Blood Tribute got a very slight nerf. Enchanter's Emblem got a sizable buff, in my opinion, 15 up to 18%. Enchanter's Emblem is back on the menu for any, like, hybrid spirit characters. Resto Locket got a buff, very strange, but I think they just really want this item to be good. Metal Skin got nerfed, Counterspell got nerfed, Golden Goose Egg got giga nerfed. In case you don't know, Golden Goose Egg, it used to be a thing where in the late game you would just activate Golden Goose Egg over and over and over again for tons of golden statue buffs. And there was also people who were building characters like Rim around the idea of just getting as much farm as possible and then spending like 30,000 souls on just Golden Goose Egg buffs. And instead, now it takes 2 seconds to channel a hatch on the Golden Goose Egg. It makes it fulfill its original purpose of being a supports buy this early to get a bit of a lead to get their powerful spikes, like Paige getting knocked down, but it doesn't let characters like, say, Seven just go, all right, well, we have nothing else to buy for the build. I'm in all tier 4 items. I'm just going to buy sell eggs forever. Boundless Spirit also got nerfed as well. I'm going to make a quick aside and a quick little, like, evaluation of all these patch notes. This is a really weird set of patch notes. We're already in a pretty mouse 1 meta, like pretty left-click intensive hero meta, and almost all of these things are either nerfing things that hurt the mouse 1 heroes, or nerfing the things that make the spirit heroes better. So I'm just a little confused. Maybe there's some information that they have on their end that I don't realize, but it feels like we've been in a pretty mouse 1 or hybrid mouse 1 meta for quite a while with characters like Haze and Wraith, Venator and Infernus and Seven, all these like hybrid mouse 1 characters just being really, really powerful and being able to really rule the game for long periods of time, especially in lobbies at like Phantom and below. So I wonder if this is just a result of how the Eternus and highest level lobbies are playing, or if this is more of a result of how the lowest level lobbies are playing to make the game more new player friendly. I don't know. Tell me what you think down in the comment section. Next up is a bunch of hero adjustments, some of which are really interesting, some of which are just kind of cool. Abrams is getting kind of rebuffed, it seems. The melee damage per boon is being increased by 10%, meaning that Punchy Abrams is back on the menu. Siphon Life just got a half-meter radius buff in general. The T3 also got a bit of a nerf, though, so it's just kind of a... It's not trash early, but it's the exact same in the late game. Infernal Resilience T3 went from 7% damage generated to 8%, just a buff to the tankiness of Abram. Seismic Impact height increased from 4 to 6 meters, which I think just means you fly higher in the air, which is pretty good because it means that you actually fly above the characters you care about hitting you. The T2 increased from 0.6 to 0.7 stun duration. I think this is probably to make it easier to hit melees and not get parried instantly. And the Unstoppable duration just increased from 4 to 5 seconds. I think this is Abrams was doing not great, so we're going to make some very slight adjustments across the board, make Siphon Life better early, make Infernal Resilience better late, and make Seismic Impact a bit more impactful. I think it's good for Abrams. He kind of fell off after the last set of nerfs he got, so we'll see if this helps bring him back to where he should be sitting as a character. Apollo got a buff to melee resist reduction on the riposte T2, and the T3 got a better stun. Now, I don't know how Apollo's sitting in win rates at the moment. I just know this is a very frustrating character to play against when the opponent is good at it. So I'm a little concerned about a basically half-second buff to their stun and like 8% buff to their melee resist, but we'll have to see how this plays out in the long term. I don't think that they would do this willy-nilly. They've been pretty careful with Apollo since they had nerfed him the first time. Billy got a buff. Rising Ram now uses a break-off angle when grounded, allowing upward movement if looking up enough. If you've played Calico since their changes, you know that the way that Calico's dash works now is that if you flick your camera super high up in the air, you can go up and you can also go down. I'm assuming that this is basically just bringing Billy in line with Calico to where you can go up with Rising Ram and potentially hit someone in the air to knock them around. Speaking of Calico, Lashing Leap. Leaping Slash. Goodness gracious. That was a full dyslexia moment, I guess. I apologize. The scaling got reduced, which is pretty good because it was really strong. The cooldown got increased, which is pretty good because it was really strong. You don't get 225 souls, you get 200 souls if it's within 3 seconds as opposed to 4. That's a nerf. Ava got a bit of a change to be in line with zipline rules. We'll see this terminology pop up from time to time. It basically is just providing parity across the game where these abilities that get you out of dodge for quote-unquote free are now just working similar to how a zipline works, so that the muscle memory for newer players is similar to all abilities like this. I think this is a really good change for the game, and it's really good for the new player experience. Their ult got a bit of a move speed reduced and a bit of a cooldown nerf. I think overall that these are pretty much fine. Calico is going to be fine even with all these nerfs hitting them. They've turned into a bit of a hybrid gun burst character, and the Return to Shadow is not getting a damage nerf. It's just a move speed and cooldown nerf, means that the character is going to be fine. They won't be as prevalent in their ability to curb stomp, so to speak, but they'll still be very, very strong. Celeste got a lot of changes, and I'm not exactly sure what the point of some of these are. I'll see how they sit when I finally get a chance to play them again. But they got their bullet melee resistance reduced again, which is good in my opinion. I think that having them have a downside like this to default for having the upside of being super mobile is good. Their gun fall off got adjusted. I think this is a slight buff, but I could be misremembering. I apologize if I'm wrong. I don't have all of their stats right in front of me. Bullet damage up is fine. I think that this kind of hammers home that they didn't want Celeste to be a burst spirit character. They wanted them to be closer to a hybrid like Seven or Infernus. Probably closer to Seven, where they have an ability that they proc that makes them do a bunch of extra spirit damage. and the more fire rate and the better gun items they have, the better they look using it. The spirit scaling got increased on Light Eater as well, which is like pretty fine. It wasn't a huge buff, but this ability procs several times, so this is a big increase to their possible overall damage. Dazzling Trick no longer grants move speed, but the T1 gave the move speed back, so I feel like this is just you have to level it to get your move speed, which is fine. Radiant Daggers got their like actual spirit scaling increased, which is okay. The ability doesn't do a ton to begin with. Their T2 went from minus 15 and plus 60 to minus 18 and plus 70. That is a really big buff to them, but I don't think that the average player is going to notice this buff. This is going to make the really good Celeste players go, oh, so I can just spam my daggers easier to get my damage stack up. And that's something to be a little worried about, because them having less cooldown on their daggers, or like less, them getting extra cooldown back, like it's minus 18 instead of minus 15, meaning that they come up they come up 3 seconds sooner, means that the daggers are just generally a better ability now and much more spammable. The T3 fire rate increase is a bit odd, but like I said, this seems to be really going in line with their like gun bullet changes to make them more M1 focused than they were, which is interesting, but Shining Wonder got some very slight nerfs, and I think this once again falls in line with how they're like, all right, so we want them to be about their gun a little bit more than they currently are, so the base range of the ability went from 15 to 14. And instead of plus 10 max bounces, it's plus 8. So I believe this takes it from 18 to 16 at max level, which is fine. Celeste needed a nerf on that ult. That ult's still so good. Doorman got some big adjustments. The bell doesn't get its range at the beginning on the T1. It gets it on the T3 now. The T3 doesn't give the charge anymore. The T1 does. Which basically all of this just goes, Doorman Bell is no longer as potent until you get it to max level. They will not be as much of a menace in lane. Solid nerfs, solid changes. I'm a big fan. I think that their current position in the meta is pretty good. I don't think that they're winning too much. I don't think that they're too oppressive. I think people just don't know how to play around good doormans. And so this is going to make it so that the good doormans are very different from the bad ones, because now the bell is much worse earlier, but much stronger later. So, we'll see. This, by the way, the doorway shows the range where the second door can be placed on the minimap. Your team sees this too. This is wonderful. I think this is an amazing change for Doorman, and it makes them a much more interesting and dynamic character, because in the casual games where you're not really communicating, your team will see, okay, so this is where their door is centered on, and they're pushing their door somewhere around here. So you can usually see how they're trying to play. If you see the door like placed underneath your walker or guardian, okay, they're probably trying to teleport someone under the guardian by shoving them through a door with a cart. Pretty cool stuff. The T3 distance spirit scaling got a slight nerf, as did the just general distance it got a slight nerf. But I think that's to make up for the fact that your team can now use your doors much more effectively, which is fine in my opinion. And luggage carts can move unstoppable people. I did know about this. It wasn't that abusable, but it was kind of abusable, because if you shoved someone through a doorway, the cart would kind of take them anyway, even if they were unstoppable. It was a weird interaction, but it seems like they fixed it, and that's good. Dynamo, base ammo up, kinetic pulse spirit scaling down, pulse width up, T3 pulse range up a lot. Quantum entanglement now replenishes a charge for charged abilities, which is a pretty big deal. Half effect on allies, which is a weird sentence. I'm assuming that means it gives you half a charge. I haven't played Dynamo since the change, so I don't know, but I'm assuming it gives you half a charge. But that's still pretty strong. And then a slight nerf to Singularity. Basically, Kinetic Pulse got some adjustments to make it longer range late game, but doesn't have as much scaling to absolutely obliterate people. Quantum Entanglement now giving charges helps you and your team a lot, making them more supported than they used to be, and a slight nerf to their, Sorry, I misread that. Once again, we're having a dyslexic moment. I flipped the numbers in my head. A slight buff to Singularity T3. That's a pretty big deal. Hell yeah, Dynamo buffs. Graves actually got a lot of buffs, and they might actually be good now. They've been pretty C tier for a while since all their nerfs. They might be back into like B or A tier because of these changes. Jar of Dead got a spirit scaling up. Pretty cool. The health per boon increased. I don't think this will affect the ability too much. Most gun carries will be able to blow up the Jar of Dead heads pretty soon. But I have noticed in games where Graves are buying Heroic Aura, the Jar of Dead heads are a little bit harder to kill, so that might be some tech that actually matters now. They fixed them colliding with the world sometimes. They increased duration by 4 seconds now at T2. Grasping Hands got a really big rework here. The deploy time got reduced. That's fine. That's whatever. The T3 changed from +1 immobilize second, +1 second of being immobilized, and -12 cooldown to +1 second of being immobilized and 2 ghouls summoned. Meaning that if you're spamming your 2, at max rank, you'll actually get ghouls. You finally have a reason to max out Grasping Hands if your build is actually like built around being a summoner, so to speak. This also means that you'll be a lot better at pushing down walkers in the mid to late game because your Jar of Dead heads will die less often, and you can summon ghouls by just spamming your 2 now, which is pretty interesting. SNSF T3 got a bit of an adjustment to be able to actually work better, which is nice. Borrowed Decree now just default summons 2 ghouls on cast, meaning that maxing the ability is now much less required to make Graves be a character, so that's nice. The T3 no longer summons 3 ghouls, and they went from 5% current health on the explosion to 6% current health on explosion. So overall, just solid Graves buffs. They're now a lot better than they used to be. I've noticed this pretty heavily in like Oracle level games, that people just don't know how to deal with new Graves buffs, but I feel like at the higher levels, people will be just fine dealing with this. So this is just like a make the character more playable type buffs, more than like a let's make them super strong type buffs. Inferno's actually got a buff to their reload time, making it go from basically 2.5 seconds to 2.25 seconds, which makes them pretty buffed. I'm not going to lie, though, I don't know what Flame Dash speed now moves faster by the same amount of speed above your base. I don't know what that means. I really don't. I wish I did. I haven't noticed any differences in the Flame Dash, and I've played Inferno since these changes came out, so I'm not exactly sure what this means, but if you know exactly what this translates to, please leave a comment so that everyone can learn. They also buffed the Concussive Combustion T2 from 65% explosion lifesteal to 85%, meaning that this is now a, like, if you're getting, like, hard CC'd, but you got it off early, you're going to survive a lot better. Ivy. Stormform Spirit Scaling reduced a little bit. T3 Spirit Scaling reduced a little bit. And then Airdrop got some very slight nerfs here. The cast range is increased from 18 to 22 is actually a buff, but the rest of it is nerfs. Like the cooldown is going up, but then you get the cooldown back when used on allies, but that's a nerf to how Ivy currently works because you're usually just using Airdrop to run around and be a problem, so. Overall, some minor nerfs, but buffs to how they use it with allies. It is no longer disabled by damage over time abilities, same as Zipline rules. Once again, we're just going for parity across the board. Kelvin changes. Frostgrade radius increased from 6 to 6.5. I think this is to compensate for all the range nerfs, because Kelvin kind of needs range to make frost grenades not suck. The spirit scaling got reduced a little bit, and the T3 spirit scaling got reduced a little bit, but honestly, the frost grenades were really strong to begin with, so these nerfs are not going to be that bad. The T2 increased from -20 to -25 seconds of cooldown, which means that Ice Path T2 is now better to get. And now the T3 also grants +20 spirit power. I think this is to bring it up to how it used to be in strength. I know I saw people complaining that even with the changes to Ice Path T3 in the last major update to Kelvin, that the overall spirit power you got wasn't as much as you used to get unless you had like Boundless Spirit, and even then it wasn't that good. So I think this is them just trying to bring up parity to old Ice Path. The Frozen Shelter T3 just got a buff from 50 to 65 health regen. Just very slight adjustments to Kelvin. I think they're a little bit better off now. McGinnis nerfs. I did read these, and there are some nerfs to Heavy Barrage, thank goodness. It's a bullet damage buff to make Gun McGinnis a little more viable. Mini turret attack range increase to make Turret McGinnis a little more viable. Medicinal Spectre radius increase to make Healing McGinnis a little better, and then Wall increase to make Wall McGinnis a little better. Are you picking up? They're slightly buffing all the other ways you play McGinnis, and they're going, all right, Heavy Barrage, 10-second nerf, 0.03 scaling nerf. That sounds very small. You have to realize that Heavy Barrage is a multi-hit ability, so this is 0.03 down per hit, meaning that across the course of the ability, with the dozens upon dozens of times Heavy Barrage could hit, this will nerf the scaling by like a couple of percentile points pretty easily, if not up to like 5 to 10%. This is a bigger nerf than you think. As well as the spirit scaling reduced by 0.04 is another thing that is just a solid nerf to it, meaning that maxing it, it's now going from what? From 0.23 to gaining the extra scaling at the end there. You're missing like 0.7 total, if my math is correct. Which once again, on a multi-hit ability, that's a lot more of a nerf than you think. And also, The DPS was just reduced by 4 at base, meaning it's even more nerfed. I think this is a pretty solid set of changes. I don't know how much this will affect McGinnis doing the heavy barrage build, but we will find out. Mina fixed a bug with Rake with how low HP bonus damaging its non-hero targets was dealt. When they were low, the spirit resist didn't matter effectively. I think this is a slight nerf, but it just means Mina's now working correctly, which is fine. Float time up is a buff, and being able to zoom and unzoom to redo float time, pretty solid. And they buffed Nox Nostra bats, but they reduced DPS a little bit to compensate. I don't think this is actually a nerf. I think overall Mina will feel about the same with Nox Nostra, because you'll actually be hitting your freaking bats instead of them running off into the ether like they used to do. Barrage Fire Scarabs is getting another rework, I guess, for some reason. It now drains life, dealing DPS and healing you for 8 seconds. It doesn't give the damage amp anymore. It now reduces the enemy output by plus 20% and plus 15% at the T3, so 35% at max. Overall, just another rework to Scarabs. I think they're just not happy with how this ability works right now, and they're trying to find a way that makes it work. Dust Devil radius increase, that's pretty good in my opinion. The T3 recast window got buffed, that's pretty fine in my opinion. I think that the new Dust Devil is a lot more powerful as an initiation escape disruption tool, and that it's in fact totally fine for it to exist as it currently does. I think it's pretty great. They got a little bit of a nerf to the Jin Mark spirit scaling. That's fine. This ability shouldn't be doing 1200 at like 10 minutes. They improved the visuals, not buffed them. Sorry, words are hard. The slow duration did get increased, and the multiplier duration did increase. However, I think that overall this is still a bit of a nerf to the Jin's Mark. Hopefully, that ability is pretty scary right now. Traveler no longer gets interrupted by non-hero sources nor dot damage. I feel like, once again, this is kind of zipline rules coming back. The wait time got reduced, the interrupt cooldown got reduced, the base cooldown got reduced, it can now be cancelled, and it can also target units, whatever this means. I'm assuming this means you can target stuff that it couldn't target before. I don't play enough Mirage to understand this last sentence, but overall, these seem like good changes to Traveler, whereas before it felt pretty useless, and now it's probably going to go back to feeling pretty good to be able to teleport around the map again. Bow and Krill nerfs, combo range reduced, DPS reduced, spirit scaling reduced, combo cooldown did get buffed back a little bit from 140 to 130, and T3 DPS reduced, but they got spirit scaling, and the combo health got rescaled from 50 to 30 plus 1 per boon, but it's not retroactive. Meaning that the early game kills will probably be giving like 32, 33, 34 health, but the late game ones will be probably giving like 60 health if you're... I don't actually know how many boons you get in a game, but I'm assuming it goes up to at least 50. Overall, combo nerfs because combo is really good right now. Shiv, interesting adjustments here. Stamina increase, but stamina cooldown increase. Bloodletting no longer interrupts sliding, which is a really, really big deal. But that means that Shiv's mobility just went up a lot. But it is now affected by healing modifiers, meaning I believe if you're getting anti-healed, it doesn't reduce as much, or I mean, the amount of health you get back gets reduced more. But that means if you have someone with like healing increase around you, that means bloodletting will be better. So it's a bit of a trade-off. They fixed a bug with the Killing Blow T3, causing the cooldown to be delayed if you fail to execute during the allowed window. I think that's probably a good thing. Bugs are bad, even if they are technically making the character worse. Killing Blow now continues forward and dealing damage until it reaches a target it can kill or runs out of range. Meaning that now when you hit someone with Killing Blow, if you're not killing them, you're going through them. Which is kind of a good thing, because that means that in the early to mid game, when you're not using it as an execute with resets and stuff, because it's not as powerful, you can use it as an extra dash on just a longer cooldown. Good, bad, I don't know, you let me know. I'm not a huge Shiv player, but I think this sounds like a good change to Shiv for the early to mid game, and that in the late game, it means that if they're not executing someone, they have to be very careful because they could just put themselves super out of position if they just go through them. Silver adjustments. Slamfire weapon accuracy reduced from -25 to -30%. A bit of a nerf to Slamfire, but Slamfire is their strongest gun ability, so that makes sense. All of these abilities now benefit from range increases, right as they nerf range. Interesting choices, but you know, whatever. Boot kick, once again, it's the same change that Calico and Billy are getting. You can now go flicking it to the sky and you'll be able to go up. Once again, I think this is for parity, and that's a good change. Tailback spirit scaling got an increase, I think, to try and make it so that hybrid silver is a bit better. Lots of silvers are buying Silence Wave so that they can just dive better at the moment, and like Torment Pulse on occasion. I don't see that often, but on occasion. And so just getting a little bit better spirit scaling on Tailback will be pretty nice. Lake and Curse now grants a little bit of move speed, and they rebuffed the resistances a little bit, and then they buffed the health a little bit. And now there's a 1.5 second buffer, similar to a lot of other characters, where you will get kill credit if the thing dies after a certain amount of time of you dealing damage to it, which is a massive buff to late game silver when they're tearing through a team fight. I think that silver was struggling pretty hard in the lower level games before this patch. I think this is probably enough to bring them up in power in lower level games. I think in higher level games, silver is going to be even crazier than before, though. Victor, some very interesting changes. We're getting tanky Victor, 46 to 50 health per boon on top of all the other changes to health, but 30% less effectiveness from lifesteal. It's a pretty solid nerf to Victor, a character whose biggest power spike was always Infuser. I don't think this is actually going to hurt Victor as much as people think, because the lifesteal was always just a bonus to survive longer, and Victor could actually operate without it. But we will see. I haven't played Victor since this change went through. I just haven't gotten them in the game yet. I think this is a sizable nerf, but I do not think it is the death of Victor, personal opinion, because I've seen people trying out builds without lifesteal on Victor for like the past month or so since the last set of changes to Victor went through. I think that part of the problem is all about the third ability being just true damage to everything around them that is causing all of these changes and adjustments needing to be added to Victor, because the aura of suffering is just really, really strong in lots of different ways. But we will see. We will see how this affects Victor. Keep your eyes out. Keep your eyes on them, because I think their health per boon is taking them from more of a, I'm going to just lifesteal through everything and cleanse all the debuffs and you'll never kill me, to more of an Abrams character where it's just, I have a lot of HP and I'm regenning it really fast and you're going to have a really hard time killing me because of it. This doesn't affect the one giving you max health back, by the way, because that is not an effect from lifesteal. It just gives you health back when you hit shots of your one, by the way. I think that's something people are forgetting. Shocking Reanimation got a radius buff of a pretty sizable amount, but it got a cooldown nerf to compensate. The T3 no longer gives that radius, though, so, you know, it got put at the base level and not at the max level. The cooldown gets brought back at the max level, and actually by a little bit extra. So it's 210 seconds minus 70, which is 140 seconds, to 230 minus 100, which is 130 seconds. So it's got like an overall 10-second buff at max rank, but a bit of a nerf at base level because most people don't get T3 on Shocking Reanimation until very late in the game. So overall a slight nerf, but at the end game, it'll be better for Victor. It also deals a little bit of extra damage, which is interesting, but it's good. I think this is an okay change to the T3 for Reanimation. Viscous changes. Puddle Punch got scaling nerfed, but it has plus 20 bonus damage. The wind-up time got a little nerfed. It'll be a little bit easier for people to parry now. The displacement duration got nerfed, which means you won't be able to juggle people around as obnoxiously by punching them everywhere, which is a big deal. Goo Ball stun duration reduced. This is probably to counteract Goo Ball dribbling, and if you know what I'm talking about, you understand that this is a good thing, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, just be happy that you never got Goo Ball dribbled. The lockout period from being affected again is increased, which is a good thing. Anything to nerf the Goo Ball being able to dribble people is a good thing. But the duration got a bit of an increase. I think it's to basically counteract all of these slight changes to make it so that you're not as immediately dead to a really good Goo player who's going to bounce the ball on top of your head a bunch of times, but most Goo players are just getting an overall buff to the character. Wraith, slight changes. Card Trick Heart now only heals for half the amount for secondary targets in the area. That's a nerf. We love that. It now pulls cards out of a 2-deck stack, which lowers overall variance and gets a new 2-deck stack after that is depleted. I think the idea of this is basically to make Card Trick be a bit more consistent of an ability and less, oh, I have 3 jokers, time to go kill everybody. Project Mind cooldown increased, but the T3 basically gives it back to you, so they're making it so that you kind of have to get T3 Project Mind if you want to be safe with Wraith, which is fine. I think that it's pretty good considering you really want to max your 1 and your 3 on Wraith right now, because the 3 gives you infinite ammo and the 1 just gives you double buffs on your card trick, making it so that you have to go, all right, well, Project Mind is a lot worse until I max it means that you might have to delay getting your 3, which is a good change overall to the character. It's a very slight adjustment and nerf. Personal opinion, I think it's a nerf, but we'll see how it goes. The full auto now interrupts and finishes an ongoing reload on the T3 level. That's a good thing because, well, it kind of sucks to hit an ability that gives you infinite ammo, and then the game to go, hang on, I have to finish reloading before I give you infinite ammo. It's a little rough. Telekinesis nerfs. The cast time is now almost a half a second, which means that you have a better chance in order to counterspell it or, like, just do something to avoid it. The debuff duration reduced by a half a second. Really good stuff. It means that you're less likely to insta-die when a Wraith hits you. The range got reduced, meaning they have to be a lot closer to hit you, and the cooldown got nerfed as well. It got increased. All of these are really good nerfs to telekinesis. That ability kind of felt like unreactable CC, and if you were not a really, really good player who was really good at reacting to everything super fast. And so overall, just some very slight nerfs to the ability and the numbers department to make it feel a little more fair to play against. Yamato, fixed flying strike triggering heavy melee procs rather than light melee. Alright, cool. There's a lot of Street Brawl changes. I'm not going to talk about them. Street Brawl is fun in a silly mode, but, like, I don't think a lot of this is really worth talking about too much. Until these items, all of these T3 or T6 probably, or whatever, legendary items, until they're actually viable in the normal game, I don't think that they're worth talking about the nerfs, buffs, changes, but, you know, you can read through these. They're all on the screen. You can pause at any point in time throughout any of this part of the video in order to read all the changes to these items. Overall, I think that this is just fun changes for Street Brawl, and that overall it's not a big deal. So that's all the new patch notes coming out. I'm going to end this with a bit of a personal recap and personal, like, vibe of how a lot of this is going. I think it's a little strange that we keep getting overall nerfs to spirit characters and only slight adjustment to gun characters at the moment. I wonder if they just have an idea in mind for how they're adjusting stuff, or if maybe they're adjusting based off the highest level of play, more so than, like, the, you know, phantom downwards levels of play. They're mostly looking at Ascended Eternus lobbies and seeing what's happening up there and going, okay, well, spirit characters overperform up here. Let's make sure that they're a bit more balanced, and it'll probably make people have more of a fun time. Because, to be fair, a game like this is going to draw in all the people who are good at left-clicking, and it'll make them want to play the left-click characters. And left-click characters can generally have a pretty bad time when a lash drops out of the sky and blows them up for all of their health bar with a Tank Buster, Spirit Burn, Mystic Reverb proc, and just one-taps them out of the blue. So I do understand a little bit of these changes, but I do think that they need to be a bit careful. We're already in a meta where mouse 1 left-click heroes are pretty powerful, and that they need to be careful to not nerf any of the spirit characters too heavy, because a lot of the better spirit characters that counteract and fight these mouse 1 heroes are just going to struggle if they continue to nerf their items. Overall, I don't think it's a big deal yet. I just think it's a bit of a thing that concerns me at the moment for the balance of the game. I think we're generally in a mouse 1 meta, and I hope that they just kind of know that and keep that in mind. Nerfing items like metal skins, base bullet resist is one of those things that makes me squint my eyes a little bit and go, alright, but everyone knows that Hazes and Wraith's win rates are pretty high, and they're pretty powerful mouse 1 characters that have access to pretty powerful mouse 1 abilities. Everyone knows that Venator is one of the best characters in the game right now because the highest level of play is picking him a lot. But I don't know. Let me know what you think. Am I off base? Do you have a different opinion? I love discussions about this game. I think that discussions also are a really good thing for a game like this when it is still very much in, like, alpha beta territory, and that I think that any type of feedback for the devs is probably good feedback, as long as you're kind, respectful, and thought out in how you give said feedback. Either way, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to catch you in the next one.